Hi, I'm Denise Riffey, Outreach Specialist with Family Strategies, and today we're here with Floyd Godfrey because we want to find out what's new, what's trending, and what Family Strategies is doing to help the mental health community here in the East Valley. Floyd, you have been really busy this year with your professional life, your personal life. Tell me what you are working on right now. I hear you're working on a workbook.
Yes, I have been developing a workbook for young men who have sexualized attachment issues. It's come up more and more frequently over the years, and I felt like it was important to address that.
What's the title of the workbook?
The workbook is titled Healing and Recovery, and specifically for young men who are trying to understand confusion they have that's going on, often related to their sexuality. And just if we were to define sexualized attachments, probably important. Sexualized attachments is when any sexual impulse gets pulled into attachment wounds or needs or deficits. And so an easy example of that might be if you have perhaps a young person who is sexually abused and then later in life discovers that they have ongoing fantasies or they're acting out sexually in ways that mirror the abuse that happened to them. So the abuse and the situation there sort of perpetuates itself. And that would be a more severe example of what we would call trauma reenactment or trauma bonding, trauma repetition, and those would be examples of sexualized attachments. So it's helping young men specifically with some of those kinds of issues that arise.
How do you make sure that you're doing what the young man wants you to do in therapy?
Oh, that's a good question, because everything I've ever done always needs to be and has always been client-directed. We want to make sure that we're pursuing the goals and that the clients have, that the clients come in with, that the young men and the clients are wanting to work on. So being client-directed is very important in pursuing the goals that they have in mind. I do think that there's been a problem over the years where therapists are often overlooking symptoms of sexualized attachments and sort of moving past them without recognizing where they came from. When sexualized attachments are coming from attachment wounds or deficits or needs that are ongoing, unresolved, never met, you at some point as a healthy clinician, you've got to look at resolving that and healing that. And that's the healing aspect of the workbook.
But that seems to be like a really long, arduous trail that somebody's going to have to go through with that healing pattern. And is that why sometimes your therapy and your treatments can be 18 months, 24 months? Tell me more about that process.
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes it's a long, arduous process. And what first brings a client in is not perhaps the real issue that's going on. And so to sort of uncover it layer by layer and discover what needs to happen in healing. So if we're talking about sexual abuse, for example, sometimes memories don't come out until they start to unravel what happened to them. You start to think about things, you start to do some journaling, and you start to remember other aspects of the abuse. One thing about sexual abuse too, Denise, is that it hijacks children's needs, legitimate needs that they have. It hijacks them and sexualizes them. So kids who are naturally looking for adult guidance and mentorship, they're looking for affirmation and validation and praise and affection. All of those legitimate needs get sexualized when they've been abused. And so sort of piecing that out and helping the client realize what are legitimate needs, what are needs that have been hijacked and sexualized, and sort of pulling those apart to do some healthy healing work, it does take some time. And in some cases, recovery. And when we're talking about recovery, then we're talking about compulsive, sort of addictive behaviors and recovery concepts to eliminate some of that. Someone has to learn how to be sober and how to handle perhaps compulsive sexual behaviors that have occurred as a result of sexualized attachments. And not everyone is a sex addict. Not everyone who is abused may have compulsive sexual problems. On the other hand, many do. And so understanding recovery aspects as well as healing aspects, again, back to your point, it takes some time.
It also sounds like it takes some real expertise.
Yes, I think a lot of therapists are just trying to help and be client-directed on the level they understand. I have found it to be really helpful. We have 12 CSAT therapists in our office. Those are certified sex addiction therapists, and they've gone through extra training, takes a couple years, extra supervision beyond your licensure, to be able to understand all types of sexually compulsive behaviors, trauma behaviors, things that would happen. So I found it extremely helpful to be able to collaborate with other CSATs about some of these issues and see the missing links and the missing pieces, have some depth with it rather than just trying to do it on my own.
So how do you do check-ins between the therapists? Because this sounds like, to me, from the outside looking in, that it could get really heavy. So how are you guys doing your own self-care and making sure that you're helping each other?
So self-care, well, and I would add to that collaboration. So when we're working on cases together, typically we meet on a regular basis to collaborate so that no one is an island trying to figure out a treatment plan on their own. That's just not good practice. But in terms of self-care and check-in, we've developed sort of a culture here at the office where therapists have time with one another to talk about cases, even how it's affecting them on a personal level. If perhaps it's been a difficult case or something that's been emotionally difficult to work with a client, to talk to each other, to work as a team. That's just a culture we've sort of built in, knowing that it's important that we take care of ourselves as we're working with some really heavy topics.
Well, I find that really satisfying, and it just makes sense that you would help each other to help other people, and that you would be willing to be collaborative and to not let necessarily your egos or anything like that get in the way, that you're willing to say, hey, this is a really difficult case, I need some help. Because then you're really getting a whole team approach to helping your child instead of just one person's perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think as a counselor, you can get burned out. If I'm just in private practice by myself and I'm trying to maneuver through all of this alone, not only is it burdensome, but after a while you can't carry it as easily, and you just get burned out. Compassion fatigue, tired.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, are you seeing any trends right now in the last couple of years that you're feeling like you have to address as the executive director of this agency, and then also as a clinician? Yeah,
that's a good question, because there have been a lot of changes, and I think that the pandemic that's occurred has only exacerbated some of the changes in what we've been seeing. As an agency, we've now developed programming for adolescents who have compulsive sexual behaviors happening. Usually it's pornography. And then we've also developed a college program for young single adults who are struggling with sexually compulsive behavior. And it's been interesting because there's been this increase in younger and younger sexually compulsive activity. And it often starts with pornography, not always, but usually. And for different reasons. The ideology as to why these younger folks are acting out is a little different than some of the older adults we've worked with in the past. So classic sexual addiction is a little different now than what we're seeing currently with more millennial development of sexually compulsive behavior. So trying to work with some of those issues has been a big trend for us over the past probably 5 or 6 years, and trying to help these younger clients who are really struggling.
So in closing, Floyd, what would you say to anybody that might be struggling with these concepts that we're talking about? How can we help them?
Yeah, that's a good question. If I was talking to clients who are thinking about getting help, one thing I would want you to know is that you're safe here, that whatever direction you want to take with your life and the goals that you set, that we're client directed, and we would work with you to help you on those goals and the direction that you want to take with your life. That's always the way we've approached it, and that's always the way we will do it. Also, something else I would say regarding some of these concepts, if you're struggling with symptoms of sexualized attachments, to have hope. I realize that it gets confusing, it's difficult, you might feel a lot of distress, but to hang in there, because there is hope, and you can find healing, and you can find recovery in your life if you need that. And there's many who have. It's often a long, arduous process, but you can find that peace in your life and take the direction that you want to take with your life.